Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and this is it. Big moment, starting your team. And hopefully, right now, you have gained just a bit more knowledge than you had coming into this whole course, that you now understand a lot of more of the finer points of the game mechanics. You understand where maybe your current team is balanced, where it might need to be balanced, where everything happens. And that's the magic, that right now we're going to start bringing everything together that we have learned. And you gotta start somewhere, you know? Everyone remembers their first. For me, it was that nice moonlit night, and there she was. Or he, depending on how you swing, or if you're just a girl. And there she was, you know. Some people, they're turned off by the husky women, but I don't mind. And that's where I found her, my Snorlax. And that's when I knew that it was going to be competitive battling at first sight, that with that stockpile ability, everything just gets a little tougher, but she lasts longer, and that's where it's at. So everyone has that kind of Pokemon on their team. Everyone has that kind of moment where they realized, this is where I become a competitive battler. They either did it for that Pokemon or that Pokemon did it for them, and with Snorlax and me, it was a little of both. Because I started picking up like, okay, so this effort value thing, oh, using the ability correctly, and oh, getting that nature to make everything work. And then I just started figuring out, like, wow, this Pokemon's a lot stronger than it should be on the surface. And then pumping EVs into it made it even stronger. And everyone has that Pokemon. Whether it's that Garchomp that, even though it's used a lot, it's really special to you. That it's won you more games, it's pulled you out of hard situations, and you can't live your team without it. And like with me, there's a couple Pokemon like that. And there's probably a couple Pokemon for you too, or at least that one Pokemon that you either desperately want on your team, or that one Pokemon that is the core, the heart, the everything in your team, you know? That could be that Typhlosion, you know? People aren't playing Typhlosion, but it's got Eruption, it can Scarf, and it can just be a devastating force. And some people, they just have it. They know that there's that one Pokemon. And that's what we're talking about today. You need to start with that one Pokemon, and you need to find out what it's weak against and what it is. So we've already gone over sweepers, tanks, setup Pokemon, and with Snorlax, this is where it happens. You need to identify what that Pokemon is. Snorlax, it's a setup tank, and then you also have to identify what it's weak against. Well, fortunately, it's just normal type, so only massively weak against fighting types, and it also has a slight, like, little kink in defense, depending on how low. But overall, very reliable, very strong Pokemon, good just Pokemon to begin with, honestly. You are weak against, you know, getting taunted, getting hazed, getting whirlwinded. But when you're looking at it, like, you're just trying to find as much of a balance as possible, and Snorlax is that good start, that it turns into a physical sweeper. It is that stat-up Pokemon, but it isn't a good tank, and it isn't a good immediate sweeper. So this is when you start expanding. Now, I'm not trying to build a team right now. I'm not saying that this is my ultimate perfect team, but this is the idea. So for you, you might want to figure out like what your Pokemon can do and how to make it start. And if you don't really have an idea of where to begin your Pokemon, look at all the Pokemon I've already listed. Look at all the examples. Where do you want to begin? Do you want to begin with a hard sweeper and then start backing it up, making 1 or 2, maybe even 3 sweepers the heart of your team, making it that, you know, you're going to try to run over opponents the whole time and then use 3 other Pokemon to support them? Do you want to begin with a support and find out what other Pokemon work with them? I think a great supporting Pokemon to start off with is Smeargle. You look at Smeargle, this thing does a lot of things. It can set up a Sticky Web. It can set up Stealth Rocks. It can also go and be a Spore Pokemon. It can have Baton Pass to give extra little abilities that it gains from Moody. That, you know, you go with Focus Sash, and now you have just ridiculous things that you can do to your opponent. You Spore them, Focus Sash breaks. You set up Sticky Web, you Baton Pass it off, and now whatever boost you got from Moody goes into your next Pokemon, and then it could be a good pivot. Oh, what's that? My offenses fell with Moody, but my defenses went up. I'm going into a tanky Pokemon. My defenses fell, but my offenses went up. Well, I'm going into a sweepy kind of Pokemon. It's a really good Pokemon that, you know, if you are understanding where your team is coming from, that's awesome. One point I would like to bring is Sticky Web. Lowers the speed of an opposing Pokemon switched in. Well, that means if you're relying on this, and if you're not even counting like Rapid Spin or things that can remove your Sticky Web, now you're actually looking at now you're getting an idea of what you can do. Now the Pokemon on your team don't necessarily have to be fast to be sweepers. And this is where you can just take it to the next level. Be like, Okay, I have Smeargle as a hard opening support, going to soften up the opponents and going to be good. I now have the potential to baton pass some tankier stats into Snorlax while they're asleep and getting some setup. But I do have 2 normal Pokemon, so I'm still really only weak against fighting, but I'm not really strong against everything else. Well, fighting, we all know what fighting is weak against. Ghost. Well, I can't just look up. Oh, hey, apparently I can do detail matches. Nice. And when you look at all this, you kind of start to get more and more ideas. It's like, okay, I need to look for a sweepy kind of ghost, or not even a ghost type. Anything that resists fighting, so flying types. Things like that. You have to start looking around and understanding what works where. Now, one thing that you can see right off the bat is, Mega Charizard Y. It doesn't have the greatest speed. It can get outsped. It can get outswept. Even with the timid nature, it doesn't have, like, the craziest speed. But now that you have that entry hazard coming in, I believe that -1 stage is 66% of their initial value. So they're losing 33% of their speed. That's insane just from switching in, which means now Charizard has a bit more of an edge that you can maybe even forego that timid nature, go into the modest, pile that into special attack. Now you have a huge special attacking Pokemon that's going to hit like a truck and have speed advantage most of the time. Now, even if you are paranoid, still go with the timid nature. Also, timid is nice just in case they get rid of that sticky web. But now our team's starting to form. That now we're starting to create a lot more strengths. Right now, though, depending on how you run Snorlax, I have Crunch on mine. You only have Fire and Dark typing, which means now you're looking for a sweeping kind of Pokemon that has great coverage. Your Mega option is already taken, so now you have to look for other Pokemon. Azumarill, it's on the OU. Like, OU is also pretty honestly a good place to start because it's showing what is strong, and if you are out of ideas, it could be a good pivot point to start coming up with ideas. Togekiss, it's always a strong Pokemon, but even then, like going down into lower brackets, a lot of the Pokemon I've reviewed, you can start taking from that list that, a good mixed sweeper that sets up really well that I find is Barbaracle. You throw Barbaracle on this team, well, now you have water, now you have a good switch in, now you're starting to balance it out. You have special attack, you have physical, you have stat, and it's pretty much like as long as you don't get countered out by other people, you're looking at keeping a good edge and being really strong. Now, the only problem about Barbaracle is that it uses Focus Sash, so you might have to either forget Barbaracle, forget Smeargle, and start like readjusting your team from here. And then also now you get to look at other things like, okay, what if I just want to like regain control? I don't have a good safe switch with Snorlax. That way you need to look for a really strong mixed tank or a really strong regular tank. Looking at Blissey and Chansey, these are great special defense tanks that I can use Blissey. Now I have a switch in for special defense, even though Chansey's kind of a better option, honestly, with that Eviolite. But I mean, now you have Blissey, switch in on that special attacker, try to weaken them, and you're good to go. One thing, though, is we also need that status that we were talking about. Sableye is a good status Pokemon. Cofagrigus is a great physical tank and status Pokemon, so then Cofagrigus, well, it's not an item, but, Cofagrigus. And now it's like, okay, we're doing really well. I think that Barbaracle might be the weak point, maybe even Smeargle or Snorlax, depending on how this team works. But we have team building going on. We have elements from everything, and with just tuning and trying to find out which direction your team is going in, because right now this team doesn't have a direction. It's just kind of a little bit of everything. But you can either go back to your core, go back to Snorlax, be like, what do I want to aid Snorlax with? What direction does Snorlax take my team? Or do I want to kind of just have Snorlax as a secondary effect and then change the direction of my team with something else? So hopefully this just shows you some of the creative process. Just go out and don't be afraid to lose. As always, don't be afraid to lose. Don't be afraid to try new things. Suddenly you realize, wow, Blissey, every time I switch it in, I lose my edge. That's not being a good pivot. Switch out Blissey. Oh, Cofagrigus. Oh, Barbaracle. If the Pokemon aren't coming through and they're not the core, like if Snorlax doesn't come through, but I love it too much, I'm not going to drop Snorlax. I'm going to make sure I can start supporting Snorlax better, or I make sure that my team can start picking up slack in other places. But say Barbaracle's underperforming, well, I'm going to drop that Pokemon and I'm going to find something new to get it with, unless Barbaracle is something I can't afford to lose. And eventually you start just filling up your team of MVPs in different roles. And they start covering your weaknesses because you removed what was already weak on your team to bring in something stronger. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Piecing it together. And I hope you all have a nice day.